So, ladies and gentlemen, I know after lunch it's always very difficult to get attention to some topics, but I see that the topic of logistics infrastructure is of great interest. So I thank you all very much for coming to our panel discussion here. The title is Transport and Logistics Infrastructure, New Investment and Development Opportunities. I have a quite big range of experts sitting here on the audience, and first of all I would like to thank all the participants here for participating today, and I hope we will have a fruitful and very interesting discussion today. I will be the moderator, so I will replace Jackie for 1 hour. I will also would like to thank very much the rapporteur, Professor Jan Simmons. When we close our discussions, it's your work, so you have to summarize everything and write down everything. So thank you very much for your help and also for your kind willingness to support us here. Most discussions, I think, today we will have in English language. Vladimir, he would like to say or answer in Russian language. So I kindly ask you to use the headphones for interpretation. But we have quite good interpretation today. I noticed this morning already. So thank you also very much for all the ladies who are sitting up there with the translation today. Well, we have quite a good big group of experts here. Please feel free to ask questions. I will, if there are any questions, raise your hand, and I will try to go to the tables, give you my microphone, and then you can ask all questions you have. We have 1 hour, and we should raise those questions that are of interest also for you. Well, when I was reading the topic, Transport and Logistics Infrastructure, New Investment and Development of Opportunities, I thought, wow, this is an interesting topic. And I saw also the audience that is here today, and I thought it's a quite interesting group here. And I hope we will get a lot of results and interesting statements today. And I'm quite sure that it will be a very helpful and interesting discussion today. Well, actually, I would also introduce a little bit the companies that the experts are representing here. On my right is sitting the representative from European Bank for Reconstruction and Development. Donald, I might say, EBRD founded 1991. Currently active in more than 30 countries, from Central Europe to Central Asia and the southern and eastern Mediterranean areas. EBRD serves in the interest of the shareholders of 64 countries plus European Union and European Investment Bank. Investments in 2014 were made by 8.9 billion euros. My opening question to Donald is, what are the current obstacles in terms of transportation and logistics that should be removed to improve the flows of goods and services from a perspective at the beginning from a banker? Thank you very much for participating, and we are now listening to you.
Thank you very much.
Can you just... It should be open.
Well, there is actually a significant number of transport infrastructure project portfolio in the Eastern Partnership countries, and these projects are under implementation. There is need, though, to speed up the implementation of these projects in order to gain as soon as possible benefits that these transport projects would bring. And in this regard, the implementation capacity is a key factor in expediting the implementation of these projects and therefore seeing the results of the investment. I would also like to stress that also preparation sometimes in these countries, it needs to be enhanced in order to prepare projects at required standards for EBRD and other IFIs, so that the financing of these projects could take place without delay. And of course, regional integration, which we are all discussing here about, it should be the focus in targeting priority projects for the countries in this area. These would benefit not only the balancing of the economic growth within the country, but it will also foster regional integration among the countries and also the integration to the TEN-T transport network further on.
From these 8.9 billion euros, how many percentage is going into the transport sector?
Well, transport sector is about over 33% of the overall of the total portfolio of the bank. So it's one of the key areas where the bank is financing.
Thank you very much. Next to Donald is sitting Guntars Jansons from Latvian Railways, founded 1992 from, I think you were developed from Baltiskaya Železna Doroga, if I remember correctly. And I learned already 10 years ago the ports of Riga, Liepāja and Ventspils are a quite big issue for the railways here. They have 1,933 kilometers of network. Congratulations, it's quite a big network. You are the 5th biggest railway freight company in Europe, with a freight volume in 2014 of 60 million tons. Guntars, also to you, what are the current obstacles in terms of transportation and logistics that should be removed to improve the flows of goods and services? What is your perspective?
Okay, well, first to start with the advantages. So we need to mention definitely that our networks with the Eastern Partnership countries are integrated, they are fully interoperable, so we are unfortunately less integrated in the European transport networks until the so-called Rail Baltic line will be built. So really we have this control over the situation through the common organizations, and we are using common standards, so we can at the business level really have the impact and say over how we organize our work and what do we do in our railway system. And this gives a huge opportunity to invest into improvements, of course. So we have this infrastructure available. There is a capacity which can be used, and of course there are a lot of opportunities for improvement. When I was thinking about the main, say, issues which could be important, especially in the future when we hopefully change more or less from transporting energy raw materials to transporting goods and products. We need to get to better predictability of rail transportation services. So currently there is a quite big difficulties to say exactly when the train or when the wagon or when the good will arrive at its destination, being at the port or station or wherever. And so far it's fine if we transport say coal and stock it in a pile, that's okay, but for goods it's important really when it arrives and when it will get on the shelf, when it can be sold, used, or whatever is the purpose of these goods we are transporting. So we need to rethink, I think, the ways how we organize this railway transport, and perhaps there are a lot to do to improve this predictability of the service. And the other important point I would say is the papers. Actually, what we see internally in Latvia, so we are spending nearly more time on processing papers than on processing wagons or trains. So the other priority would be to get to the paperless operations of the freight, and Well, preparing for this conference, I read yesterday the European regulation on trust services. I don't remember really the correct name, and I got really scared of that. So there is authorized institutions and supervision bodies and control bodies over the supervision bodies, and I don't want to be critical about that, but I'm just worried about the cost of this. And therefore, maybe this is a radical proposal, but I think, could at least at the business level to invest in trust rather than in trust services. Because when I submit the declaration of personal income, I don't need to sign it anymore. Maybe we can get rid of stamps and signatures on our papers and just trust the partners who are entering information into the databases. I think perhaps that's very radical, but shouldn't we think about it?
At the beginning, you said one very important keyword. It was harmonization. And I remember when I started working here, one of the key issues was how to implement GOS norms from Soviet times to European Union norms and standards. And now I see also discussion with Rail Baltica. Maybe we can discuss about Rail Baltica a little bit later. But do you think the harmonization process is finished already? Has it started? Or what is the status, the current status of the harmonization?
Well, the current status is that Europe takes into account the specifics of our railway system when working on the new versions of so-called TSIs. So on paper, this is harmonized. In reality, of course, there are two separate railway systems which are perhaps in some sense coming closer and closer. But of course, there are technical differences which will remain forever.
Thank you very much, Guntars. Next to Guntars is sitting my long-term friend from Georgia, Giorgi Doborigjinidze. I always say your first name, so sorry that maybe I pronounced your last name a little bit late. Professor Giorgi Doborigjinidze has also studied at the Technical University of Berlin, where I studied, so we have the same type of education. He's a professor for logistics and supply chain management, CEO of Georgian Logistics Association. From your perspective, what are the current obstacles in terms of transportation and logistics, and what should be maybe improved?
Thank you for your question. So you potentially know that Georgia is the natural gateway for South Caucasus, and we have seen also quite dynamic increase of cargo flows in direction of Central Asia. But still, of course, we have problems. So we have two main problems. First, this is the infrastructure in South Caucasus, which does not, let's say, does not show the network effect. We have seen a very good and dynamic flow of container transportation in last 3-4 years in Georgia and Black Sea ports, Poti and Batumi. Last year, Poti handled about 450,000 TEUs, which is quite good result for a small country like Georgia. And we might reach in 2-3 years our capacity limit. So the first is the infrastructure. The port capacity should be improved, and the efficiency in the Georgian ports should be also improved. And second, it is not sufficient if you have a good port. If you want to be competitive as a transit corridor, you have to have also the quite good developed hinterland. We are lacking at intermodality in our transportation corridor, and development of intermodal transportation in our region, I would say, is one of the most important challenges what we are facing now. And second, this is reliability. My colleague next to me also mentioned we have still problems on the Caspian. Sometimes the shipments, the time of shipments are not predictable. So we are still not competitive with the North Corridor in time and cost. On the other hand, the transportation Trans-Caucasus Corridor is actually the shortest way from Europe to Central Asia, but however, in terms of, let's say, some delays on the cross-border border crossing points and also in the ports, which are sometimes also congested during the heavy winter times and during the, let's say, the seasonal periods, we are still, there is still potential again to improve the capacity and to improve the operation of ports and railway. And third, I just would also highlight, we are in a transformation process in logistics and transportation in Caucasus region. We have seen last 2-3 years entrance of international companies, Gebhard, Kühne-Nagel, Procter & Gamble is presented with its partner company which provides third-party logistics services for them. Logistics is a high technology field. And to deal with high technology, we need the good people who can handle this equipment, this infrastructure, which costs millions of dollars. And I would say third bottleneck is advanced education in logistics and supply chain management and implementation of international practice. To be competitive, we need the good infrastructure, we need the reliability, and we need the good people who can really compete internationally and just promote our corridor to be integrated in the international logistics network.
Thank you very much. Talking about the education, what do you see should be next steps to be done also from European Union or from the Georgian government in order to support this idea of education in the field of logistics?
I think European countries could be and are our best partners. We are just right now cooperating with 3 German universities and trying to introduce the new bachelor program, Bachelor of Engineering in Logistics with double diploma program at the Georgian Technical University. And I think from the European perspective, so Georgia, Azerbaijan and Armenia, so I'm speaking for my region now, this is a small region. And we need this know-how transfer from European side, and I think both from the European side and from Georgian government, it would be very helpful if we can support the development of such a cooperation between the regional and European universities, between the companies, logistics and transportation companies, and let's say to establish advanced logistics education in cooperation with the European universities and European logistics companies in our region.
Thank you very much, Giorgi. Next to Giorgi is sitting Virginijus Jastremskas, if I pronounce it correctly, I'm sorry for that, from Lithuanian Railways, Geležinkeliai, I think it's pronounced. Founded on Christmas 1991, also from Baltiska Železnična Doroga, if I get correct. Transport volume 2012 was 14.17 billion ton kilometers, with 22% of transit to and from Kaliningrad. So maybe Lithuanian Railways is facing a little bit other obstacles. They have 1,750 kilometers of network, and what is very impressive for me, 52% market share on the Lithuanian freight market, something that we are dreaming of in Germany, actually. From your perspective, what are the current obstacles in terms of transportation and logistics, and how should be removed to improve the flows of goods and services?
Thank you. So we recognize that business needs at least three simple things. First of all, the tariffs. Second, time and security. So if we going in this way, so we recognize that we have some obstacles which are being before, and I believe that we have improved in the future. So border crossing points, interoperability of technologies, and safety and IT software. So if we are in the crossway between Europe gauge area and wide gauge area, so we recognize that we have been involved in different projects. First of all, I could mention 8 European freight corridor, which we are the part of that. And from another side, we know that there are OCGD corridors. But usually they goes from east to west or from west to east. And if we are looking to European Union and Eastern Partnership countries, so we found that we have to create some products which connect these countries with European Union. And so if we have aimed to connect these countries, so one of example can be a Viking train, and I believe that we will talk about this project a little bit later. And this Viking train have possibility to connect all these countries to increase freight flow. If you're talking about passenger service, so there we are too little bit successful. We create product passenger train between Minsk and Vilnius. It was mentioned by our Director General of Confederation of Lithuania, Gediminas Rainys. And we short journey away will cut in half, so from 4 hours until 2 hours, 2.5. And so from 2010 until nowadays, passenger flow increased 4 times. So it can be used in the future to create some additional, some similar products in the future.
Integrating into European Union, can you say us something about the current status of the Rail Baltica? I heard that the first step will be done through Marijampolė to Kaunas. Can you say something about the current status of this project?
Yes, current status is we are proud that in this year we will end first stage of this project. From Polish-Lithuanian border will be constructed European gauge until Kaunas. It means 120 kilometers, and so European gauge will receive middle of our country. And so there it is very important logistic centers have to be created. And so in next week, in Tuesday, we will open 2 of them. One of them in Kaunas and second one in Vilnius. And so we think that this logistic part, skill in our professional life will help to create freight flow in the future.
And do you see enough support from PKP, from the Polish government, to open this Rail Baltica?
I think that not only Polish side, it is project for 5 countries, Baltic states, Poland and Finland. And so in this case, this project is online, is harmonized with all countries, and I think that Rail Baltica project will go in a good way in the next future.
I wish good success. Thank you very much. Next to you is sitting Vladimir Stimenko. He's the general manager of Levada Cargo from Kiev. Добро пожаловать сегодня. He wants to speak Russian language, so I think we should use the headphones. Levada Cargo is a forwarding company which is concentrating mostly on railway container transport and operating the Viking trains that we heard a few minutes ago already. They are not only operating these trains but also warehouses and offering transport in truck sphere. Also to you, Vladimir, the questions, what are the current obstacles in terms of transportation and logistics that should be removed to improve the flows of goods and services?
Thank you for introducing me. As you know, there have been changes undergoing in Ukraine for over a year. These changes are occurring in different areas, including transport. Ukrainian producers are looking for new markets for selling their goods, including European countries. They face various challenges. First of all is European certification. Another issue is related to the lack of understanding, how to work with new logistic chains, how to deliver goods to Europe. As manufacturers, were aimed at supplying their products to CIS countries. Now they are obliged to change their logistic chain. Ukraine undertook an obligation to adopt its legislation to the standards of the main European directives, and we as a private operator delivering goods, we face this issue on a daily basis. And these issues are not only asked by the Ukrainian bodies, but also European bodies in terms of goods delivery. What changes can we see? I think there are changes, positive changes, changes for good, work through European associations that help us create dialogue both with Ukrainian government and European institutions to minimize, to decrease the document turnover and document flow, as it takes a lot of time to send cargo or goods. How to draft documents, how to execute documents so that the goods can be sent to Kaunas or to Riga and then further on to northern France or to England. Document execution takes a lot of time. However, there are great perspectives, as we are a company working with railroad containers. I'd like to give an example of successful activities. There is a Finnish company cooperating with us as a railway operator. Finnish company works with maritime transportation. We have been working for over 2 years, and we have been delivering the cargoes of our clients from Odessa, from Dnipropetrovsk to France, to Germany and other regions. There are successful projects and they can be successfully implemented. However, we need support, we need dialogue between the countries so that we remove and eliminate bureaucracy. These are the main issues.
Think about your Viking trains already. Maybe just 2 or 3 sentences just to describe these Viking trains, what kind of services is behind it.
The container train Viking, just like its counterpart Zubr, is a regular connection between Riga container terminals, and if we speak about Klaipėda container terminals, with Belarus, with Ukraine, with ports in Odessa, and then cargo can further go, let's say, for example, they can go from UK to Riga or Klaipėda by maritime way, and then we reload them to rail, then transport them to Odessa, and then can deliver this container, for example, to Turkey. So this is a pan-European corridor that has to be developed, and our company makes significant efforts to make it a regular train. Previous speakers already mentioned that these trains, one of the main challenges of these trains is irregularity, unpredictability. But regularity and predictability can only appear when there is full load. Right now, we see that import of Ukraine dropped by 70%. So these trains are difficult to load. But once again, there is an opportunity to change logistic chains, to explain to customers from EU and from Ukraine that multimodal transportation is not difficult, that people who are used to transporting their cargoes by roads could switch to rail or to sea and to get the same result, sometimes in shorter time.
Vladimirs. Well, we were talking a lot about railways. Now it's time to switch over to the airports. And I must really admit, whenever I arrive to Riga, I'm really impressed of the airport and the development of the airport here. Next to Vladimirs is sitting Andris Lipins. I think those of you who come from Latvia, you all know him. Well-known businessman here. Well, as far as I'm informed, you have around about 4 million passengers per year, maybe 5, maybe you can explain a little bit later. You have 7,600 tons of freight, and you had good experience with lowering prices in 2003, I think it was, or 2004. You came up from 700,000 passengers all the way up to 4.5 million passengers, which is very impressive from my point of view. Also to you, the question, what are the current obstacles in terms of transportation and logistics that should be removed to improve the flows of goods and services? Maybe not only goods, you can also explain something about passengers, which is also in our interest.
Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Just on figures, nearly 5 million.
Nearly 5. Nearly. Sorry for that.
Yeah, and it is in terms of cargo. It was at peak. It was nearly 70,000 tons. This mainly because of Afghanistan lift or Afghanistan cargo. But this year we're expecting about 25-30, which is a kind of local demand rather. So, but policies for would be several-fold policies, I would say. One thing which would be creation of demand for aviation services. And this would be broader economic policies with the growth of GDP per capita, with sophistication of economy. Clearly, demand for aviation services would grow. Another is clearly policy, so to say, policy-related, especially with Eastern Partnership countries. Kind of policies related to lifting visa regimes or improving terms of trade would clearly help with the flow of passengers or tourists or cargo. This would be, these are main things. Of course, another as infrastructure, especially as for Riga, for Latvia, but also for many European Union capital airports, infrastructure is there. Also recently Latvia completed its Riga airport modernization program. Now we can say also the Riga is one of the kind of modern, in terms of safety, one of the modern airports in Eastern Central European countries. But this would be kind of more or less kind of factors is there, but important addition, clearly important addition would be this 10T project Rail Baltica, which would help integrate not just Riga but also Tallinn and Kaunas in a kind of broader supply chain. Also, we're not talking about next year, we're talking about 7-8 years from now when these airports will be integrated, and it will help kind of, it would truly improve modality both for cargo but also for passengers. Kind of these kind of factors would be kind of main factors which I see kind of which will first of all would naturally help to develop air infrastructure, both with in a context of European Union, but also in a context with trade development with EP countries. Thank you.
Can you give us some figures? If you have some easier visa regime, what kind of percentage do you expect growth of your airport here in Riga?
It is kind of quite difficult really to assess. It is again broader context in a context, because also another thing, there is clearly there would be increased tourism exchange on both sides. But again, I'm saying not just tourism would be one, but also tourism infrastructure should be there. There is clearly, as limitations would be, or limitations regarding visa regime would improve, also investments in tourism infrastructure also might follow on both both sides. And therefore, this is rather, I should not this is rather general, but currently we national carrier been testing at least flying to all 6 East Partnership countries' capitals now. Now we have air transportation with 4 of those countries, but volumes are stable. And what I'm saying, with improved conditions, with improved economic environment, these flows clearly both cargo but also tourism would be increasing.
Thank you very much. I would like now to go back to the banker. In Germany, we have a big discussion not to make new debts from the state budget. Our finance minister is quite strong. He says we are not allowed to make more new debts. At the same time, we have to maintain our existing transport infrastructure. There is a lack of investments in the maintenance of infrastructure, not only railways and roads, but also other modes of transport. At the same time, there are lots of wishes to build new infrastructure. From your perspective, what should be the steps for the modernization of transport infrastructure and networks, and what should be taken?
Yeah, you've touched upon a very interesting topic, which is maintenance of transport assets. As we know, usually the focus tends to be on developing new projects, because these have visibly a big importance. And of course, people appreciate new roads, new railways, new ports. But maintaining the existing asset is as important as building new assets in this sector. And there needs to be a balance between borrowing space allocated for new projects and budget space for maintaining what has already been built. Because the cost of rehabilitation of these assets over time will be such that it will be similar to a new development of these assets. So it's a very critical aspect that importance should be given both to developing new infrastructure projects, but also maintaining those that have already been built and upgrading where necessary. The bank has always put a great importance to the development of the transport corridors, and through all transport modes, be it roads, railways, ports. And parallel to this, the bank is encouraging the countries and governments, sponsors, to develop also the logistics, which are as important for the facilitation of trade exchange between the neighboring countries and with the EU more wider. So in this regard, the bank is providing financing to both private and public clients for the development of the logistics parks, logistics terminals, multimodal in particular, which have a great role in fostering trade exchange. The bank has always taken advantage of the available grant funds, which are mobilized for the facilitation of project preparation and project implementation. And it's currently working for the preparation of a facility that will provide concessional financing for logistics investments. And this is an ongoing process, and we hope to be able to complete the work by mid of this year and be able to provide concessional finance for the development of logistics projects in ports, in fleet renewal, warehouses, green logistics in particular. And this program will be complemented by about 30 million donor funds, which will go for project preparation and project implementation.
What about the public-private partnership projects? Do you support this idea from the banking side?
We do. We are always looking for viable PPP projects, even though we all recognize this is not an easy task, because you need to have the prerequisites in place to attract interest from foreign investors, and you need to ensure that there is traffic in place so that the investor can take the risk. And whenever traffic is not there, the government should be prepared to bridge this missing traffic, and the government should provide some sort of assurances. So it's difficult, but it's not impossible. The bank has already had has financed in the past through all countries of operation PPP projects. Roads remain a bit more difficult for the reasons that I mentioned. We need to identify a good potential projects that have the possibility to be developed on a PPP basis.
The next question to our colleague from Latvia. When we talk about trans-European networks, you talked already about the Rail Baltica. Should this network also be expanded to our neighboring countries? The idea, the financial background?
So, well, the integrated networks, to expand them under the whatever brand name 10T network, I think that's a good idea. But well, on the other hand, we have quite a lot of different corridors. I know at least 5 or 6 different types of corridors, and I think the European rail freight corridors are the first ones which are at least attempting to make a real sense. And the same relates to 10T network, I think. So it has to have the practical sense and some sort of financing behind that. And there is a financing mechanism, which is this so-called Connecting Europe facility, as we know. Well, but again, if I'm right, I might be wrong with the figures, but I think the amount of this Connecting Europe facility covers so around 10% of the investment needs on 10T network. So I would say yes, it makes sense to expand the 10T network, but it needs to be expanded at the same time with the finance attached to that, and then of course this finance has to be allocated at the best way it's possible. And I hope the new this financing period and the new mechanisms where the finance is allocated by the central agency in Brussels, so it will work well. And then of course yes, but what we see of course is that on the other hand the new so-called Juncker's initiative has taken away some 3 billion from the rail sector to the other financial instruments. Well, we can hope that this instrument will generate more money indeed to come back to the railway sector. But on the other hand, of course, this is a replacement also of the grant money with the debt. So this is a bit controversial thing, of course.
Giorgi, in this respect, what could be the role of the Eastern partners in order to develop these networks?
In general, all the infrastructure development, I think it needs to be agreed on the basis of demand forecasts and really on the economic grounds. as soon as we can agree how the business will develop in quite a long term, actually, because of the long repayment times of the investment, then of course it makes a lot of sense to join the forces both in realization of the projects and in design of the project and in financing of the project. That shouldn't be just the issue of Brussels as well. So that's the national issue, that's the issue of the countries alongside the corridor.
This is the perspective from the European Union. From outside the European Union, Giorgi, what is your opinion about this?
Yes, we think that yes, it should be extended. I would just highlight one project, railway project, which is implemented now by Georgia, Azerbaijan, and Turkey. So we are constructing now the direct railway line from Azerbaijan via Georgia to Turkey. So it will connect practically the Caucasus to Turkey and Turkish ports, and you potentially know that there is also the perspective that Turkey will be integrated into the European rail network. We already know a couple of rail and block train operators, railway operators, also operating quite a long time in Georgia, Caucasus, and Central Asian region, which have already started on the regular basis the block train services from Europe to Turkey. So practically after the completion of this new railway line, we will get practically the Caucasus will get an access to the European rail network. And on the other hand, what we see now, we see that the companies, the consignees, the cargo owners practically are facing the problems with the cost efficiency. The companies which are quite active in Asia in the high-tech sector are concentrating to save their inventory costs. So that means for cargo operators, more reliability, more cost efficiency, and faster also shipments, because in the modern logistics sector, time is and reliability is more important than cost. And we believe we have some niche. I mean, with our region, Georgia and Caucasus, because it is really the shortest way from Asia to Europe. But of course, to be competitive and to be, let's say, to act as a real and competitive partner from European companies, we need to rehabilitate our infrastructure. Because and there is not only so-called hard side important, there is also soft side important, because colleagues already mentioned that it is not sufficient to invest billions of dollars in the infrastructure. We need also improve the border crossing points. We need to improve our reliability, which is, we believe, one of the most important factor to be the competitive.
Thank you very much. Talking about border processes, then we come to the question of customs, of course. Virginijus, from your perspective, what are the main challenges in terms of custom regulations and other legislative obstacles or differences between countries? You are right at the border to the Eurasian economic zone, so you have your experience, first experience made already. What are the main obstacles in these fields?
Not too much, because we have quite good border crossing point between Belarus and Lithuania. In Kena station, we was success that we can combine procedures together with border and custom departments. And so we have to say that border crossing point in freight application will took for one train half hour. As I know, that is quite good result for border crossing procedure. And so that is our advantage to say to all our partners, all our business society that please use our services from European Union to Eastern Partnership or countries to have services to freight flow from east to west and from west to east.
This is the trains. What about the roads? Do you also see no obstacles on the road transportation mode?
I am railway man, but I know that in road they have more complicated situation, and why we provide services that for trucks for truck carriers. We introduce a new service to cross border by train, and so it's maybe help for freight flow between these two countries.
Vladimir, if you think about your Viking trains, do you see any obstacles from the customs regulations, customs questions?
Yes, of course there are, but as I have already said, all of these issues can be raised in Ukrainian European business associations, and I am greatly surprised that there are changes in Ukraine, and the state, the government helps business to solve these questions, these issues. I can't see any global issues that cannot be resolved in the nearest future, as each reform requires some time, and the government, the private business, both European and Ukrainian, tells what measures are necessary to simplify, to make this information more accessible. And as any process, also this process requires time, and we hope that the Ukrainian government will continue listening to business and provide its support. Thank you.
One question that came up to my mind is, are the existing bonds between the countries enough to develop stronger and more interlinked transportation networks and to promote business corporations, or not at the time being? Very general question.
Yeah, but before answering on the broader EU transport and infrastructure development policy should not stop with TEN-T and the immediate neighborhood. And just to be also for you, for businesses, to insist to be consistent with latest this April ASEM meeting in Riga, when basically it was the conclusion was that the EU policy must reflect the globalized, or at least the continental nature of modern supply chains connecting the world's two largest trading partners. And it's these things are important also to insist already what on ministers have been deciding on meetings previously, and on whether bonds are sufficient. It's rather on infrastructure, which would be related to railway, on aviation. It's not as this this would be not. However, this fifth freedom rights on bilateral flying rights, this is still discussion we can we discuss on related aviation navigation services. There is also reforms which are still undergoing in European Union market, which will increase capacity at least of aviation market in European Union, and would help to increase existing to more efficiently use existing infrastructure.
Well, we have a few more minutes, and I would like to give the audience a chance to also to ask questions. Are there any questions which you would like to raise to the experts here on the floor? I have one question over here.
Yeah, it is. I'm Jan Simons. I'm a member of the ESC, but I also am former secretary of the Rotterdam Chamber of Commerce. And it will not be astonished for you that I mentioned inland navigation and short sea, because that's also important for the Eastern partners. As a young man on the Rhine, I see always the flag blue and yellow. Yeah, on the Danube, you was in it. Moldavia also has its ports in Dutch hands, but that's another thing. And then we have the Black Sea to go to Georgia and so on. So I think it is important to think also about it and to make the policy in that kind.
I will collect all the questions, and maybe, Giorgi, you can maybe answer on this a little bit later, yeah? Just think about it already.
I would like to ask you, gentlemen, I was waiting for more information about Rail Baltica from the point of view of infrastructure in the Baltic states. Please give me more information about this. Yes.
What about Marijampolė and Kaunas we heard already. Maybe we can hear a little bit later about going north to Riga and then all the way to Tallinn. Maybe the two railway representatives can answer this question a little bit later. Any more questions from the audience? Okay, Giorgi, maybe I can ask you to give some answers on the question first.
Thank you very much, first of all, for comment. Absolutely, sea transport is very important for Georgia, our region. As I mentioned, the Georgian Black Sea ports are practically the natural gateway for Caucasus region. We are just trying also to be competitive in direction to Central Asia. And we believe it will be a very good opportunity for us if we have this rail connection with Turkey and Central Asia, from Turkey to Central Asia practically constructed. We have a very unique opportunity to connect West Chinese the container flow to Porty, and from Porty to the Eastern European countries on the regular basis and with the shipping lines. And I think it will be also very interesting to cooperate with the operators which are operating in the East European countries, and in particular in Port of Burgas, in Port of Varna, and also to connect with the river transport from those East European ports into the hinterland in East Europa. So again, sea shipping, of course, very important, and we will absolutely try and do our best to use this chance and to connect again Caucasus and Central Asia corridor via Georgian ports to the Eastern European ports.
Okay, and now a very short answer. I'm very sorry for that. If we need 5 minutes, then it's also okay. Two answers maybe from Lithuania and from Latvia. From Lithuania, Virginijus, one information I was missing, when it will be opened?
At the end of this year.
At the end of this year?
Yes.
Marijampolė to Kaunas, and then...
From Polish border to Kaunas.
It will be double track, single track?
Single track.
Single track, 1435 course.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, okay. And then it's planned to go north to Riga. Do you also have some information about the current status of the Rail Baltica?
So well, the current status is that there is a so-called institutional infrastructure in place. There is this joint venture company established which will take over the project coordination functions and the marketing functions. So in general, there is all the information about the project available on the web, but unfortunately that's still for the 3 member states or Baltic states. Each has its own homepage. This will be corrected in the nearest future. About the project itself, of course, in this planning period, there are clear plans. There is a submission for the Connecting Europe Facility financing submitted, and mainly construction will be started in this planning period up to 2020. And it's expected that the line will be operational by 2025. So this is when all the works must be complete.
2025. And then, well, we should ask the General Director of Estonian Railways, Guy Zimmermann. He's not here. Are any plans then to go north to Tallinn already? Is also 2025?
Well, as far as I'm aware, there are intentions or drafts to go under the sea from Tallinn to Helsinki, but well, that's really the question to Finnish colleagues more than even to Estonian, because Finnish colleagues see quite a lot of opportunities in getting freight onto the Rail Baltic route directly on the rails already in Helsinki. So we hope it will materialize at some time. Of course, that's extremely expensive thing.
Virginijus, you wanted to add very shortly because we're over the time already.
Yes, a few words. First of all, that Rail Baltica was agreed in Prime Minister level of 3 Baltic states. And according to this agreement was established joint ventures, was mentioned before. And second, there was written some technical parameters. This means that through that these 3 states will go European gauge with maximum speed 240 kilometers per hour, double track with electrification. And so, according to this agreement, yesterday was task force level of ministries between 3 Baltic states, and we in this meeting talked about current situation. And according to this agreement and this current situation, we will fulfill CEF application for next financing period. And we are looking forward to June or July. Where will be the answer from European Commission. It is project which are shown in this application, it is possible to finance. And so after that, of course, I agreed with my colleague from Latvijas Dzelzceļš, it is question about financing from 2020 until 2025, when all project should be complete.
So Andres, in 2025, you're facing some competition through the railways.
Have to be.
Is it correct?
I would say it's rather a great opportunity, as Riga already have a lot of connecting, not just Tallinn or Vilnius or Kaunas, but a lot of connecting passengers, and this is rather opportunity to grow even larger. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, ladies and gentlemen, big thank you for our experts here on the table. I hope we got some information. For those of you who would like to go into depth with the information about the Rail Baltica, you can also, I think, talk personally with our experts here. Thank you, all of you, for your attention, especially after lunch. It's not very usual. Thank you very much for questions also. And now it's your job a little bit to summarize a little bit later for this conference. Thank you very much, and have a nice remaining day today also to you.